Alright everyone, so we've entered a bit of a slower period of time in Raid Shadow Legends where we really don't have a whole lot of things going on. The only actual event that we have going on right now is that daily New Year's event champion training, which they actually increase the amount of points that you can get each day from 150 to 225, so now you could easily end up missing a few days and still get that sacred shard. So that is very cool that they did that recently. But again, besides that, there's really not a lot of stuff going on. It's actually been a while since we've had one of these slower periods of time in Raid Shadow Legends. So what I wanted to do today is discuss some things that you can do when we don't really have a whole lot of stuff going on and when there's no events running. So with that being said, let's start off with number one on the list, and that is to prepare for events that are going to be coming up in the future. This is always something you can get at least a little bit of a head start on, and if you do actually plan out for certain events like the champion training event before they come out, what that does is it allows you to spend some energy before the event comes out to make it a little bit easier for when it does. Now, it's not going to be a perfect one-to-one conversion. It's not like if you spend 100 energy before a champion training event comes out that you'll be able to save 100 energy while it's actually running. But some things that you can end up doing are, for example, getting champions up to max level. Now, this is something that I do a little bit of to prepare for champion training events. Now, of course, this is going to be even easier if you have some extra vault space. You're going to be able to do this more. But if you level up your champions to, level 30 for 3 stars or level 40 for 4 stars, what that means is that you have some max level champions waiting for you so that when a champion training event comes out, you don't actually have to level them up. You can just instantly rank them up and get some easy points. So that's something that you can end up doing specifically for the champion training. Something else you can do is try to save up resources as best as you can. This is really going to help out for things like the arena assault when you need arena tokens. If you have any in your mailbox, definitely keep those there, whether you bought packs or whether you just have arena bags that have a long expiration time. If you have monthly quests that have energy, this is something else that you can hold off on for a full month until you actually have to complete the quests. This is a great way to help prepare at least a little bit. Just little things here and there. Like I said earlier, it's not going to be a perfect one-to-one conversion, but what it allows you to do is spend some time and resources when there's not a lot going on, so that when we do get flooded with a bunch of events like we have been recently, it doesn't get quite as overwhelming. And of course, if you're a free-to-play player or somebody who does not spend a lot of money, these type of things are going to be more important because the game makes it very difficult with the resources that you have without spending a lot of money to complete some of these more challenging events. So that is going to end up being number one. Number two, this is a really big one, and honestly, one of the things that I would personally recommend is to spend energy farming masteries when there are no events going on. Now, we do now have the option to unlock all masteries using gems. This is something that you can end up doing now. If you go to the masteries, you'll see here, get all scrolls will become an option, and it will cost 800 gems. If you spend the energy, I know I have a video up on the channel where I actually went through the breakdown of how much energy it actually takes in order to get all the mastery scrolls, and it turns out to be a little bit less than 800. It's around 650 to 700 energy or gems worth of energy, so you do save a bit. But energy, if you don't end up using it, it just ends up going to waste at max energy. So if you don't want to do champion training because maybe you're too burnt out on it from other events, or if you don't want to do dungeons because maybe you've done a whole bunch of it for tournaments, you can spend energy farming scrolls because there are no events for masteries. Plarium said that they would look into possibly having some events in the future that involved Minotaur's Labyrinth, but you guys know Plarium likes to say a lot of things that they don't actually end up doing. So recently we haven't had any kind of events that involve the Minotaur's Lab. So what this means is that when it is slower, you can get to work on farming those scrolls, because when an event rolls around, you're probably not going to have the time to do so, and it will be worth it because you'll need your energy to do other things instead. So definitely one of the things on the list that I would personally recommend the most. Now, moving on to number three, something else that you can do. I would not go as crazy on this one as I would on something like Mastery Scrolls, and I'll explain the reason why. But it will definitely help you prepare, and it's also one of those things where there's not really going to be a lot of opportunity to do so when we are bombarded with a bunch of events, and that is to spend energy farming Ascension potions. Now, this is going to also help you prepare for fusion events. When fusion events roll around, you are obviously going to need a lot of Ascension potions to ascend all the fusion materials. And then, of course, when you end up getting that fusion champion, if you want to ascend it to max rank, you're also going to need a lot of Ascension potions for that as well. So, again, one of those things where you won't really have a ton of opportunity to do so when we are bombarded with a bunch of events, but also there are no events that are directly tied to the keeps. So this is one of those things where if you have some extra energy when there's not a lot of stuff going on, not a bad idea to farm up some potions. Now, I wouldn't go too crazy, especially if you end up doing the clan boss a decent amount. And the reason why is you actually do get a decent amount of Ascension potions, especially that middle tier one, at least that I find anyway. You get a lot of these greater Ascension potions just from the clan boss every single day. So I wouldn't go too crazy and farm a billion, trillion Ascension potions, or you'll just have potions that you'll never end up using, and that energy could have been used for something else. But if you're really low, and especially if you want to help prepare for an upcoming fusion, or if you have a lot of champions that you're looking to ascend, not one of the worst things that you can do when there's not a lot going on. So that is going to end up being number 3 on the list. Now, moving on to number 4. This is a really important one, and I think one of the things that a lot of people kind of forget about when there are a lot of events going on is because it's easy to get distracted and just kind of forget about it. More important things to do, and that is to keep updated on time-gated content like your challenges and your missions, especially going to be important for those of you guys who are newer. If you are still working on your missions, very, very important to know that there are a lot of points in the actual missions where you have to wait until a certain day of the week for one of these keeps to unlock in order to actually progress through your missions. And if you end up forgetting about it, then you're going to have to wait even longer for you to move forward. And of course, Plarium does this in a way to try to break down the mission progress in a way to make it take as long as possible. So you really have to keep an eye on this. Very easy to forget about this when there's a lot of stuff going on like there was recently. I don't blame you, especially if you're going for, like the Torment Fusion. With all the holiday events that we've had, there's just so much going on. It's really easy to forget about this, but when there is not a lot going on, this is definitely something you want to try your best to keep an eye on so that you don't delay it even more. So challenges as well, you won't see that icon on my screen right here because I've already completed all of mine, but that's very similar to your progress missions, also going to be time-gated stuff that you're going to want to do when it becomes available. So that is going to end up being number 4 on the list. Now, number 5 is just working on your overall progression goals. This is something when events are going on, usually we get focused on working on the events as best as we can, completing them efficiently, getting everything done in a timely manner, and not necessarily too worried about actual account progression. Maybe it's a little bit different for you guys, but at least that's kind of how I feel when events are going on for me. But when there are no events, this is a great time to try to work on account progression in every single aspect that you can. Things like the campaign. If you are still working on the campaign, this is a great time to try to get some extra stars, get some of the rewards. If you're not quite at the brutal or the nightmare difficulty, maybe work on completing normal and hard, just kind of going through that. Not just for the campaign, but also for the clan boss. If you're working on moving up to the next tier, optimizing your damage, you can kind of work on your teams and your formation to try to progress in that sense. Faction wars, of course, this is something that I think a lot of people kind of, forget that this is another pretty big progression point in the game. It's a lot of work and effort to get all these different teams for all these different factions. Obviously only the truest of endgame players are really going to have a true lock on this, but something you can at least be working on and getting some of those rewards, getting some extra stars, getting higher level glyphs is of course going to increase your overall champion power. And the last thing there, dungeons as well. If you aren't quite at stage 20 dungeons, this is something that you can be working on. Something that usually when events are going on, we're not really too focused on progressing through the difficulties of dungeons. We're working on just farming what we can efficiently and in a timely manner. But when it's slower, this is a great time to kind of work on all of that stuff. So that's going to end up being number 5 on the list. Now moving on to number 6, this is one that I really like to do personally. Now I'm not sure if everyone else is going to be like this, but the reason why I threw this on the list as well is not only is this something that I like to do when there's not a lot of stuff going on in raid, but also it's going to be one of the few things on the list that doesn't actually require energy, but is going to be more of a time investment, and that is spend some time on account organization. You know, things like your artifacts. This is especially going to be important for mid and end game players, is when you end up playing the game for a while, you're going to get a lot of artifacts, and you get to a point where you just have so many of them. Maybe I'm a hoarder, I don't really know, but I have a hard time getting rid of a lot of these artifacts, and it takes some time to just kind of go through it, break it down, and see which artifacts I can get rid of, which ones I can equip on champions that I use a lot, which ones I might equip on champions that I don't use a lot. This is going to be stuff that's really difficult for me to do when there's a lot of events going on, because I don't really have the time in order to end up doing so. Same with like your champion vault and your champion storage. If you have a bunch of champions, kind of just breaking down which champions you want to work on, which ones you want to gear out, which ones you don't really need to work on. You know, this is stuff that is going to be more of a time investment rather than an energy investment. So when there's not a lot going on, this is a great time to get that stuff done so that you don't get too overwhelmed when we are bombarded with a billion trillion events. So that's going to be number 6 on the list. And again, one of the things that I really like to do when there's not a lot to do in raid. And finally, number 7, probably going to be one of the most important things on the list. Of course, I had to throw this in there as the last thing, and that is maybe actually take some time off and don't get too burnt out on raid when there's not a lot going on. Because if you get too burnt out during periods like this, then when a big event does come out, that's not going to be the time to be burnt out on. So maybe take some time off, or don't play the game as much. Don't get too stressed out about being too efficient, you know, just kind of relax and play at your own pace. And maybe this might even be the time to, instead of playing the game a whole lot, maybe do some other raid related things, like maybe watch some extra videos instead of getting too burnt out playing. Hint, hint, you know, feel free to check out some of the other videos on the channel, because we now have over 100 Raid Shadow Legends videos up and posted. So with that all being said, that's 7 different things that you can end up doing when there is not a whole lot going on in Raid Shadow Legends. Wanted to put this video out now. Well, it is the holiday season. We've got New Year's coming up. This is a great time. I'm really glad that Plarium is not bombarding us with a billion things to do over New Year's. So great time for a video like this, and I'm really hoping that these tips and this info helped you out. So with that all being said, that's going to be it for the video today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really hoping that you enjoyed, and if you did, consider subscribing to the channel. Feel free to toss a quick like if you enjoyed the video as well. And of course, as mentioned, plenty of raid videos on the channel. Feel free to check them out. They should be popping up right about now. Over 100 in the Raid Shadow Legends playlist. Have a great day, everyone. Happy New Year's, and until next time, this is Salt of the Salty Guild, signing out.